Okay.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks to all of you for joining and giving me an opportunity to express my thoughts and experiences and um, what I'm studying and learning and trying to apply as Audley's teachings. And I just say it's kind of the teachings as I perceive them or experience them. And these techniques that we'll talk about today, some of them are techniques that came directly out of the teaching that we received from Audley or from other sources, and then some are clearly from some of the other sources that may have looked at these concepts or these practices in a different way or from a different perspective. And sometimes that can be useful to provide an understanding or a perspective that allows you to apply it to yourself. And I find that, some of the techniques either probably the strongest possibility is I didn't understand the technique that Audley was teaching, and I practiced it probably incorrectly, and I got a different kind of result than he discussed. And so at the same time, I try to dig deeper into that and understand what I might have done incorrectly and look at it from different perspectives and simply try to validate that whole process. In doing that, one of the things I know we've got people kind of at all different levels of experience and exposure to this information, but we'll start with kind of a focus a little bit on Audley as the guru or the teacher, and that's from my perspective. I just say remember the guru, and then he, as I think this quote came from Yogananda, but he said, "Read a little, meditate more, love God all the time with all your heart," and that was kind of the short, brief version of the path of Kriya Yoga. And I find that's very useful. And then I like to honor the teaching, honor the lineages, the traditions, the beings that we've learned from, and that simply sets up an attitude in the mind of acceptance, of kind of putting some maybe guardrails around what the information is and why it's used and why it can be practiced. And then I like to start when we can with a meditation and some concentration practice. And I think for me, all meditation, all activities, everything I do, even sleeping, is turning into an opportunity to practice concentration or to be aware of the subtle differences in the levels of consciousness. And so if you approach life in that way, looking at everything you're doing as a way to develop yourself and to find more about yourself, it can be a little more enjoyable way to live. But we'll talk more about that. But to start with, let's do meditation for a little bit. We'll like last time do part of the beginning meditation technique and part of the concentration practice that is included in that. And we won't do the whole thing, just maybe 10 minutes or so of the meditation. But I think that I'll try to do it in such a way that anyone from any level of experience could follow along in kind of a guided sense and help you find peace within yourself for just a moment before we kind of jump into some of these ideas. And the thing that we do a lot of time, the meditation techniques that Audley taught and that are also an integral part of the Kriya Yoga path is a meditation that had multiple parts, but very simple parts. And they usually, in most of these traditions, break it down to 2 or 3 different items. And in the meditation that we were, or that I was first introduced to, maybe others were different. The two components or 2 parts of it. One is to simply, sit still, find a comfortable place and do that. But first thing we want to do is become aware of the life force or the energy that creates us, that we express as, that all people are a part of. And we want to become aware of that and feel it. And there's ways to experience that and use the mind to actually feel it within the body and feel that flow of energy and feel the presence, and to simply feel that there is more to you than just the physical form. There is some a subtle body experience and even a causal body experience that we'll get into a little more later. But in that, first we want to simply be aware of that different part of ourself, of that part of our mind. And then the second part of that is we take our sense perception that we normally direct to the world around us. We want to see, what we can hear, what we can do, what activity, what we can taste, all those things. We want to experience the world. But in the meditation process, we want to turn those senses from the outside world to the inside world. And there are sights and sounds and smells and taste, all sorts of things on the inner levels or in the subtle realm body, just like there are in the physical body. And they're more subtle in the sense that they're a weaker signal that goes into the brain, but it's one that you can, with brainwave equipment, you can actually tell when people are, you can monitor the brain and you can see that they're hearing things, but there's no sound around them. You can see that the auditory parts of the brain are active, and there's light in those, or activity in them, energy in them. Or you can see that they're having an image, or they're visualizing something. They're having a daydream, and there's specific states of mind that you can go into. But again, there's two components to the practice. The first is to simply become aware of the life force. The second is to take the sense perception and direct it inward. And then the final part of it, once you're aware of the life force, and once that you can sense it and experience it at the subtle level, then we begin to actually sit still in the meditation, and you can begin to observe the mind. And what you observe in the mind is you can observe thoughts that arise, and they literally just arise from out of nothing. Like, there goes there, oh, there's that sports car I was looking at, or there's that chocolate, or that hamburger, or that pizza, or whatever has come into my mental field. It'll come into my mind, and I can view it. But we'll practice this for a moment. The one thing that we often do when we have become aware of the flow of energy, and we've directed the sense perception inward, then we begin to monitor the breath, and just slowly experience that breath coming in and out of the body. And you can either experience it through, it's best to breathe through the nose to do that, but you can also, once you develop a little bit of sensitivity to the inner parts of your being, you can feel that energy move in and out through the various centers or chakras or energy fields in the body. And it again helps to develop the concentration. Okay, that with kind of an overview, let's sit still, sit comfortably. The spine should be upright, erect, and that allows the energy to flow better and keep you from going to sleep. Often if you lie down, you just simply go to sleep, and so you can't maintain concentration. But it helps to have a quiet place, to be in a comfortable location, and if possible, use the same location all the time. But we start by simply focusing our awareness at the top of the head. And most people, if they've never tried that, they find it interesting that you can put the mind or think about a particular spot in the body, and you can actually feel a pressure or an energy, sometimes a warmth or a tingling, but we'll focus right at the top of the head. If you've developed awareness to feel that movement of energy in and out with your breathing, you can breathe in and breathe out, and let it relax and release the things in the body. And the tension in the body, the stress in the body, all of the various parts of what we are. We hold trauma, we hold energy in the body, we hold our fears, we hold our shame, our guilt, all of those things, but all of that can be released, and you can be free from it. So we're focused at the top of the head. And then remember, in this first part of the technique, we simply want to be aware of that energy. So we focus there, we build up a little pressure, a little intensity by kind of blocking that flow of energy. And then once you sense it and become aware of it, we want to bring it forward. And with your imagination, often it's easy if you just see a small ball of light. And from the top of the head, you just simply move that, and about the size of a marble, and but a brilliant white light. You bring that forward into your forehead, what's the third eye in the chakra terminology, but the center of the forehead. And there's glands and activity in the brain that support this activity also. But as you bring it forward, you can feel that sometimes is a pressure or tingling at the forehead or the third eye. You hold it there for just a moment, and then move that small ball of light down the rest of the face, down between the eyes, down along the nose, past the mouth, the chin, down the neck. And when you get to the shoulders, you divide it into two parts. And you can simply just think of that dividing into two parts and move that ball of light out along the top of the shoulders. And I like to pause at the joints, the major joints like the shoulder joints, centers of energy, and feel that. Just be aware of it just a little bit, and then move the ball of light on down through my arm into the elbow. Again, there's a nice center of energy there. Sense that flow, and then down the forearm, past the wrist. Sometimes I pause there and sense that energy, but more into the palm of the hand. And each hand has kind of a golden or a pink flower, as you might see it psychically in others. And that's in there, and it's simply an energy field in the hands. And it varies. Some people, it's not a strong flow. Some people, it's very powerful. They can simply put their hand up and you can feel warmth in your body, because that's a center they've developed some skill and capability in. But we want to hold that in the center of the hand and rest the palm over the knee in that area on your leg. And just feel that, and feel it pulsate, feel it warmth, feel it glowing. And then leave that energy there. Just let your hands light up and keep them there on the knee, and go back with your breath to the top of the head. At the top of the head, again, we use our concentration. We use our ability to feel the energy, to feel the awareness. And we bring it together again as a small ball of light. And this time, we bring it forward after we're comfortable with it to the third eye area. You may even feel the energy pulsate there, or can move it in and out with your breath. And as soon as it's stable and easy to hold, we move it back into the brain this time. We start an inner awareness, an inner experience instead of the outer. As you move it into the brain, you may sense the different centers. Sometimes people see flashes of light or see different levels of awareness. But moving it back into the brain, you can have those sensations. And then move it down in the brain to the brain stem, and then into the spinal system. And that central channel, it's kind of a column of white light, sometimes spoke of as a silver cord, or a self-luminous movement or flow or tube of energy goes down through the center of your being. We want to move our ball of light. Just let it slowly drift down through that. And as you move down the back, you may be able to feel or sense the joints in the back, the vertebrae. At each one of them, there are energy points, meridian points, acupuncture points that can be activated for different things in the body. It's where the nerves go out to all the different organs, all the different limbs. Let it slowly move down. And as you move the energy down through the body and this brilliant light, think of it kind of washing away all of the tension, the stress, the negativity in your mind and in your body, the tension that the body holds. And just let it continue to flow down. And when you get to the base of the spine, you divide that energy again into two parts. Take it into the hip joints. And I like to feel it in the joints, feel that awareness. It helps me to be more aware of the subtle differences within my body, how the energy activates it and moves it. And then from the hips, let the energy flow along the leg out to the point where to the knees, or to the point where you had left your hands. Let that energy come together and join, and then move at least to the knee area if your hands weren't there. Let that energy pulsate, radiate. Let it just be in your awareness. And then move past down the calf of each leg with that part of the energy, down to the ankles, powerful centers of energy there that can be activated to see different things at a distance. Feel that, and then let it flow all together, everything from the hands, everything from the body, flow out the base of the feet and dissolve into the earth. We offer gratitude to the divine part of our own being, to the God self, to the guru, to whatever you perceive that part of yourself as it created you and sustains you. Offer gratitude for letting you be aware of the flow of energy in your body, for taking some control over that flow under a conscious control. So it's a concentrated effort to focus the mind and direct the energy where you want it to go. And it flows out of the earth, and it takes the tension, the stress, the negativity, and it's one technique to flow that out of the body. And that's the first technique. And normally in a meditation, we would do that technique 3 times, where we flow it down the body on the outside and then flow it down through the channels on the inside, and then dissolve the negativity, dissolve the stress in the body, and let it flow out and just become peaceful. Today we'll only do that one time, but then we'll take our breath and go back to the top of the head. Hold there just a second. Try to feel your breath moving in and out. And now we want to, in the second part of the meditation, direct our awareness, our consciousness, our senses, our sense perception. We want to direct that to the inner sounds, to the inner light, to the inner part of our being. We've been feeling that energy movement through the body, sensing it. Now we want to activate other of our senses, the inner sight, the inner sound, and turn within. And again, normally in the meditation process, we'd do this at least 3 times. Today, we'll do it once, just so you have kind of a sense and to help us briefly center and come together. But to focus and to turn in, we actually press the index finger right at the base of the eye, just to keep it closed, not to put any pressure on it, but just to hold the eyelid. And then we roll the eye up slightly as though we're looking out the top of the head. We take the thumbs and we either close the little tab on the ear, or we put the thumb in the ear and close the ear to the outside world. So we take our sense perception, we look within, and we hear within our own being. We'll do that for just a moment. Just sit peacefully, sit quietly, and direct the sense perception inwardly to know how the life force flows through the body and how it expresses in the centers. As you practice the second technique, what's called listening in, hold the arms up and hold the inner experience for as long as you can until the arms grow tired or fatigued. Not too much effort, just enough so that you experience the inner sound. Sometimes you can hear sounds like tinkling bells, like crickets or insects at night in a field, or clanging metal, loud horns. Flutes may be playing. Sometimes a nightingale song or a bird singing in the night. All those sounds occur as the life force flows through the centers or the chakras or the energy centers in the body. And it expresses in that flow. Often it's described in the various traditions as just an energy flow, or sometimes as a wind. And you can actually feel that movement. The life force is more related to the air and to the fire within us, things that don't have the physicalness or the substance like the earth. But they're subtle energy, subtle awareness, and as they flow through the body, sounds are produced, awareness is produced. Now go back to the top of the head and let's just take a moment to actually meditate. Those are techniques to help calm the mind and prepare us for meditation. For meditation, the easiest thing to do is simply monitor your breath. Breathing in. Breathing out. I always thank the divine part of myself for allowing me to calm, allowing me to experience and be aware of that part of what I am. When I'm with a group, I ask that the divine self touch each being, help them to be aware of their own consciousness, of their own life force, of the inner sounds that are produced as that life force flows through them, or the visions that they may see. Sometimes people, when they first start meditating, will see golden lights, will see a golden ring, will see deep blue fields, deep purple fields. Different stages or different awareness of energy based on how you've developed your being, your expression of consciousness. And I offer thanks to the divine for helping me to be calm and to experience that source. And I ask the divine to bless and touch each person that's sharing this energy with us, so that they can know what they are. And in the traditions that we follow, there's great claims made that if you practice these techniques, even for a few months or a few years, you can wake up and know what you are. You can know the truth about life and consciousness during this lifetime. It's not something that is unattainable or only attainable through, many, many lifetimes of very, very hard work. And you can make it impossible to realize, or you can realize the truth. And there are many techniques or paths to take you quickly to that awareness or that knowledge. The Kriya technique that was taught as part of Audley's teaching and expression, the Kriya Yoga, that's one of the most powerful techniques. Some of the other techniques that we learned and that were developed and I would say in some cases discovered, if you simply go in and to the inner part of yourself, to the self, the God self, the Godhead. If you ask that part of yourself to help you understand that information or that process or that procedure, that technique for developing your own awareness, your own concentration, trust that part of yourself. And you'll get knowledge, either direct revealed knowledge from within, depending on your sensitivity. And if you're not as sensitive to the subtle parts of components of yourself, then you put that expression, that desire, that seed, that prayer, express that into the infinite, and it will come back. And someone may come and show you the technique. Someone may give you a book or send you a link to a video that shows that technique, and you can practice it and do it correctly from teachers that understand not only your energy field, but also the technique and how to best apply it. Okay, and then let's now move gently. We don't want to disrupt our state of peace too much, but we want to come back into more of a physical consciousness, gross consciousness. And then we can think about that for a second, and then we can find ways to move forward. And there's a lot of things, and increasingly as I study different traditions, they often define the practices in terms of preliminaries or things that you need to do to get started. Like we just did the preliminaries for meditation. We surrendered our consciousness to our own self-flow of energy. We experienced that, and then we directed sense perception inwardly. And then other things that we encourage people to do in the beginning classes are examine your life and mind. And Audley produced a number of cards that will have lectures on those in the coming future. But when you look at your life or you look at your mind, do you find anger, lust, greed, guilt, shame? You can list any of those components, and if they're there, that's an activity or a repression or a struggle that you have in some part of your body or in one of the chakras or centers. And there are techniques to get rid of those. And I found one technique or one question that surfaced for me in talking with a lot of different people is you can look at your world and say, do you accept responsibility for the condition that you find your consciousness in, or do you blame others? And our society has a tendency to teach us to blame others. Even our efforts to modify or change ourselves, the first thing they do is say, well, tell me what happened in your childhood. Who will blame your parents, we'll blame the culture, we'll blame the society, we'll blame others. As long as you're blaming others outside of you for your condition or your state of mind, you will continue to suffer. When you begin to accept responsibility that you have created yourself in the way that you have, you've created a situation where you've taken birth that gives you a set of challenges that you work out, your karma. Those are different approaches to it. And then the big question is what do you think you are? And it's not who are you, or it's what are you is the most important thing. And then then how do you know? If you think you know what you are, well, how do you know? How can you express that? And then there's a concept in Buddhism, but you find it in Christianity and all the others, and it's called bodhicitta or bodhisattva, pronounced in different ways depending on where you went to school. But that is compassionate for all beings. Your motivation is to serve others until all beings attain enlightenment. And there's a strong component to most teachings that have some expression of that. Like in Christianity, it's do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and it's provide the needs for the beings spiritually as well as physically. In some cases, like Jesus manifested food for people, fed not only their physical bodies but also their spirit. In Buddhism, there's even vows that are taken by many people, the Bodhisattva vow, which says that you approach enlightenment, but you don't go all the way in and dissolve into the oneness. That you sit on the edge and you stay there until all beings, all sentient beings, all beings that have consciousness, you stay there to ensure that they can all have suffering removed from their life and can attain enlightenment. And so great levels of compassion. And in the teachings from Audley, from the teaching from the Sikh tradition, the path of the Holy Nam, as well as the Kriya Yoga traditions, they all have great emphasis on being of service to others. And Audley had service classes. He taught us to physically be of service to others, to come to the center and clean or build or help improve it in some way, gave us an example each week as we spent time in our service classes. We'd go and work with the inner beings, the masters that we know that may be in different locations, but that have the same alignment in compassion and service as we do. And we go and help Babaji help other beings on the planet, or help the other beings, the brothers, the sisters, there's many beings in all levels, and we can serve them and help them to alleviate suffering or to change life of people so that they can know themselves and they can have an awakening. And a lot of these preliminary things, if you don't develop that bodhicitta, that compassion for others or that service for others, just developing that helps in some ways to eliminate some of the suffering and to break up patterns in your own mind. As soon as you become compassionate for others, usually you start taking more responsibility for your own self. We'll talk more about that as we move forward. And go quickly, the states of consciousness that we've talked about, we all have these states all the time. It's not like you're sitting in your chair wherever you are, or you're sitting on the floor, or doing whatever, but we all have waking consciousness, dream consciousness, deep sleep, that sleep with no dreams, causal manifesting. We all have that. And then the turiya, no matter what state you're in, you can still have an awareness that there's some part of you that simply is aware that you're aware. And the ability to take that awareness and to focus it is the concentration that we talk about. And then the turiyatita, that's when you blend with the oneness and everything is arising. And you can go into that and you can blend and not stay, but you can blend and you can see the expression of all things. And when you go into that and touch that source, you can learn a whole lot. Anything you want to know about, you can express into it, and then have faith in your intuition to bring you the resources that you'd need to understand that. But those states of consciousness are real critical. And the thing I like to, and try to show this in this slide in every presentation, is that the big the big secret is that you already have all these components in your consciousness, and you express and experience all of them every day. And so there's something, and you can begin to examine those and study them more carefully and try to be aware of the differences, the transition between these states. Like as you're going to sleep, you can transition consciously. And you can go into the dream state in a conscious way and in a sense have a lucid dream, or be fully aware and conscious of things in that subtle realm. And the subtle realms are very diverse. There's lots of different levels to it, lots of things, but you can experience them. And then you can go deeper into sleep and still have that awareness, that oneness with yourself. And then you can identify with that pure witness state. You come to realize that when you enter that in the Hindu traditions, or in the traditions from the Kriya Yoga, and also the traditions from the Sikh traditions, they're more in line with this level of saying, okay, we can go to the Atman, the self, that pure consciousness. We can experience that, and we can know it. In the Buddhist tradition, it's a little more of when you get to those states, they talk about being a state of awareness of emptiness, empty of any self, any personality, any ego. That simply that's an illusion that we have. That's a part of what we are, but it's the illusion that we think we're our body, or we're our mind, or we're our ego, we're our job, we're our profession, we're our career, we're our relationships. It's easy to get into that, and all of that is just a mental construct that shows us our world, our awareness. And then always, seek truth in meditation, not in moldy books. Look to the sky to see the moon, not in the pond. And that's a good one. And then don't believe a word I say. If you believe me, you'd believe any damn fool. That was originally a strong tradition in the Buddhist tradition. The Buddha always spoke about that. Oddly, found that if you're basing your life on what you believe, you can believe anything that's incorrect. If you base it on what you know and can experience within yourself, then you can know the truth about life and what you are. And you can only see yourself. That's a hard one. I encourage people to contemplate that every day. Okay, then what do you concentrate? If there's questions at any point from here on, just you can interject or raise your hand. I think somebody sees that, and you can turn on your mic, but you can do it. But why do we need to concentrate? And what's it all about? Well, we need to take tests. We have to concentrate and remember the information. We want to wake up. We want to remember what we are. Remember versus achieve enlightenment. This is something that often there's a tendency because of the language that's used to describe the process of knowing what you are. But by describing it as enlightenment, we think we need to do something. Maybe we need to go on a journey. We need to get on a path. We need to do certain practices or certain techniques. And it's through that we can achieve enlightenment, through the effort, perhaps the effort of the ego or the spirit or the heart. But if we work hard, we'll get it. Well, it's more subtle than that. It's more of remembering what you are, not achieving it. You already have all of those states within you all the time. It's just typically you transition through them very quickly. You lie down and go to sleep, or lay down and go to sleep, and then you transition immediately into sleep. You may sleep for about 90 minutes, which is what people on average do, and then they begin to rise in consciousness to a more conscious level and dream activity, or you begin to experience things in the subtle realms, and then you'll go back into a deeper sleep, and then you may come up and you may remember your dreams, you may not, you may remember the transitions between them. But that's why we want to develop our concentration, or develop the ability to simply be aware of the transition states. And so as you meditate, it's the same thing, you know, and as you sit in meditation, it's easy sometimes. I know I'll find myself, if I'm tired or if I've eaten too much or anything, I just tend to sit down to meditate and I go to sleep. And that transition is much different than the transition into a full knowing and a full awareness in and developing mental capability. But I thought it's really interesting. It has to do with our memory, our awareness, our attention, and then the ability to hold that attention or to concentrate. And first we have a memory of what we are. You know, someone tells you that they show you a picture, maybe like Audley. He was famous at drawing pictures and showing you like, this is what you really are. This is the body. This is the subtle energy chakra centers. These are the centers above the body. These are the source of what you are, and then the source of all things, the Great Supreme. But it starts with a memory, and then there's an awareness of that memory, and then we hold it in attention. And when you start practicing with attention or playing with attention, you can find out very quickly how well you concentrate. You know, especially if you're honest with yourself. You know, can you concentrate and hold the mind on one item for even 10 seconds? Or does another thought arise? And can you focus? Can you change that? Can you use your concentration, use your mental ability to again remember, become aware, focus your attention, and concentrate on the object. So that's why we concentrate. And then what are things that we can do? Well, in the gross realm, there's lots of things you can do to train the mind. And you could memorize the Bible. And there's I've met people that do that. You can ask them any verse and they can tell you. I know some that memorize the Bhagavad Gita. And they not only memorize it in English, but they memorize it in the original Sanskrit or Pali and in some of the versions of it. And they can recite it back to you. They can tell you what the story is, what the verses are. They can do all that. But all of these develop the mind, the concentrative ability. You can learn to dance, to sing. You can play musical instruments. You can learn new languages. My experience there is learn more languages, multiple languages at one time. It's easier. You can learn to program computers. Anymore, you can't do that unless you learn multiple languages. But you have to really focus your attention on these tasks. And so you build that skill. And if you approach it in that way of learning new things, is improving or developing your sometimes much to be motivated. And you can write a book about your journey, your spiritual path, or write a book about your guru, your teaching, your path. There are any number of ways to do it in the gross realm. And then other things you can do is you can go back to college and get a degree. I have a good friend that turned 69 years old the other day and got their PhD a few days later. They'd always meant to do that. Another thing that we've talked about in several of these lectures is that you can learn and chant the 100-syllable Vajrasattva mantra. And I'll give you a bunch of links here. If you want those, send me a note and I'll send you these slides. I tried posting these things on Facebook, but they don't like PowerPoint slides for some reason. So there's other places to post those. And then you can learn to chant the Guru Gita. And this was a chant that it's a story about the devotion to the Guru, similar to the Vajrasattva mantra, but I'd say it's the really long version. It's not just the 100 syllables, but it takes about an hour to chant through that. And many organizations, like when Swami Muktananda visited the US, that was my first exposure to it. And they would chant the Guru Gita every morning. It took about an hour, but it's a very long devotional chant or song to the Guru, and it's a very devotional song. But it's, I thought, boy, I could learn that, but it's like learning a new language almost to be able to chant something that's an hour long and to do it. Other things that are very useful for brain training, there's a lot of new software tools for visual and auditory both. And and some for tactile input. But I find that the Brain HQ is, I know the people that developed that in San Francisco, and it's a very useful tool that will train your ear and train your eye to enhance sense perception, improve visual acuity, auditory acuity, the ability to differentiate between sounds. It actually speeds up the overall thought process in the brain. If it's measured when you do these brain training or any of these things, you can measure how much you've improved the concentration or improved the ability. And then other things, like I've seen people that embroidery, that quilt, that paint yantra and mandalas, and some of them I see they do beautiful paintings that you can hang on the wall, either in paint, ink, or pencil. And then some of the people in the Great Devotion and to also learn the principles associated with impermanence, they do these beautiful mandalas in sand on the floor. And then when it's completed, they either get out the brooms and sweep the floor and clean it away, or they leave it and let the wind come and blow it away. But it develops great concentration to do those things, but it also emphasizes that the impermanence or the transitory nature of our consciousness. We're here for a while. We're physically awake for a while. We go to sleep for a while. We have sleep with no dreams for a while. All these things are happening all the time. None of them, though, are what we really are. And then if you want to develop concentration in the subtle realm, there's some of the things like the pranayama, just even standard hatha yoga practice can be very useful in developing the concentration. The kriya pranayama is very, very useful in developing awareness, developing the intensity of concentration, and then crossing eyes, that seeing a third image between two fixed images. And I'll show some samples on this that I use all the time. When I first met Audley, he had a number of techniques that he taught, and they were not emphasized as much in the later years of his teaching as they were in the first 2 or 3 years. It was like a whole different set of teaching, in a sense, compared to what it was in the later years. He grew, he added to it, and it became very broad in a sense that it was hard to have all components at once, and they were eventually organized into a whole series of classes that you could do different things. All of them, though, take concentration to be able to hold and be aware of the energy, to move the energy, and to be able to do it. And then there's a number of physical things that you can do that help you to do the same things that you can do in sitting in meditation, but Tai Chi, Qigong, Bagua, that Reiki. I know several people that practice all of these, and they all tend to stimulate the body and help you to be aware of the energy, but also activate the centers. And so anything that you do in meditation often is much happier, and then much more blissful. Then I know a number of people that do things like spoon bending, and that's literally what it said. They simply get together in little parties, and they have a spoon and they rub the thing, and the spoons distort in all sorts of strange ways. And but there's some very subtle energy work that is involved in that whole process, and simply applying the concentration, being aware of it. They help to know many of the subtle components with concentration, in that it's very easy you try too hard, or you don't try it hard enough, or you make too much effort. You have an expectation and you try to do that, but it's a useful thing to practice. And then the inner meditation, inner techniques, and a lot of those are documented. Kevin is doing a great job documenting them even in more detail, so they can be helpful. And then other things that you can do that help focus the mind, practicing archery, golf, marksmanship, visualizations of any type. All of these things, you have to focus the mind and concentrate to be good at them. To try to hit a golf ball 300 yards and put it in a little hole that's about 3 times the diameter of the ball. That's pretty good. And sometimes people, can do it in one shot. And And sometimes that's called being very lucky. Sometimes it's a great concentration. And then the visualizations, many of the meditation techniques have very detailed things to visualize and exercises. I know Kevin, if you can see his screen, he's got a lot of the pictures behind him. They can be very detailed, and they seem to always grow more detailed with time. But they're great tools to practice with, and you can practice and visualize them as very large objects or very, very large objects. Or there's a lot of techniques that are used to, once you get the visualized image, you begin to shrink the image to a smaller and smaller and smaller size. And yet the detail remains as clear, but you make it smaller and smaller. And there's techniques to do that. And depending on your brain, your mind, and your ability, some techniques are simply better than others for a particular type of person or a particular type of problem. And then one of my favorites is chant mantra, neurofeedback. That can be used very effectively. The pranayama, again, the yoga, all those things. They help develop the subtle energy awareness. And then there are some things that, and again, Audley had some of these. One thing he had that we often worked with the first year or two is these little pyramid hats. We'd make these little pyramids out of paper. We'd take a cork, we'd put a needle in the cork and balance the little pyramid. It has to be balanced, and balance it on top of the needle, and then place our hands on either side of it. And you could actually make the pyramid rotate to the right or the left. And you could experience, again, you experience the flow of energy. It develops the concentration. It develops the subtle awareness. And then there's a Crook radiometer. It's like a light bulb that has a little thing also mounted on a needle with little black and white veins in it. And you can shine lights on those. And the sunlight will make it spin very quickly because one side reacts differently to the photons hitting it than the other. But you can do that with actually the energy in your hands. And you can put it in a dark box, and you can still put an infrared camera on it, and you can observe, and you can do things. And then electroscopes are things that measure, very sensitively measure. These are often made with gold film or a gold sheet that's been pounded to the thickness of a few atoms. But if it's draped over something and a charge is applied, the two ends of the metal film will repel each other, and you can dissipate that charge by concentrating on it. And its original balance, there's ways to very sensitively measure forces in gravity and stuff, but all these things can be focused on. And I work with some of the scientists at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and they are always exploring some of these. One of their experiments, it's written several papers about, is single photon double slit experiments. And simply they put a photon source in, a beam of light, and get it down to where there's just single photons or single particles of light moving toward the slit. And they've tested some monks that can stop the slits completely, or stop the photon completely so that it does not go through it. They've tested others that can affect it in various ways, and they can measure this and demonstrated extremely subtle, sensitive instruments, but they can see the mind-matter interaction. Takes a lot of concentration to do that. And one thing that they noted, when the monk from Taiwan, who actually had the ability to stop the flow of photons completely, when he did that, it put everybody around him in kind of an altered state. And they independently confirmed that. And then it turned out that it was happening at the time he was doing it. When they checked the data, yeah, there was nothing moving through it. So lots of ways to develop concentration, and all of them work. It's just like it's your effort and your application of it that makes the big difference. And then there's some useful text. Like I study about this and read it and try to practice it and validate all the time. But there's a lama, or a guru. Lama is a Tibetan word for guru. Lama Yeshe, and he left Tibet sometime in the 60s, when after the Dalai Lama, and ended up in Nepal. But he wrote some very clear and did a number of lectures, but very clear text. The Introduction to Tantra, Becoming Vajrasattva, The Bliss of Inner Fire. They have great, very useful information in terms of how the concentrated process works and what works. It's from the Buddhist perspective, but he relates it to some of the other traditions. And then another Buddhist text, the Joyful Path of Good Fortune. There's a lot of information in that. And the Buddhists simply, in Tibet in particular, when they were isolated from the world, and so they spent really 1,000 years exploring the mind, and were kind of uninterrupted by the outer world. And so they went to levels and I would say deeper levels and more detailed levels than any other culture is really documented. And so the techniques and the practices are defined and are utilized, and they're very useful, and you can apply them and simply test them to see if they help you in your own concentration. But they take concentration. They say some of the things that happens when you learn to concentrate, or you begin to develop this awareness, is thing actually test and validate for yourself is clairvoyance begins to open up. And it talks about this in the Buddhist tradition. They talk about it in this way. In the Hindu tradition, or the Kriya Yoga tradition in particular, they talk about it as cities or powers that develop once you become still inside, and once you clear the mind. Some of these techniques open, but the divine ear, the divine eye, see what others are either doing or experiencing from far away, hear what they're saying or hearing from far away, know others' minds to know what other people are thinking and what their problems are. These are things that often surface in people's lives. Sometimes people remember past lives. And then miracle powers, powers of manifesting inanimate or animate objects. These are the 5 types of clairvoyance that often develop. And as you practice, you find these gifts of the spirit, as it's referred to in the Christian tradition. You'll begin to find those expressing in some way in your life. And my experience, and many of the students that practice with Audley and these other traditions, they have many of the experiences will surface in the Yoga Sutras. They talk about 25 different type of cities or powers that manifest. All of these are included in those. We'll talk about it more from that tradition at a later time and do it, but very useful. But ways that you can know, is your concentration working, is your meditation working, is anything happening? And if nothing's happening, perhaps you're not doing it correctly. It's good to find a teacher that can understand your particular situation, your issues, and then help to see what you're doing or not doing correctly or incorrectly. And then training the mind in tranquil abiding. And this is the term from one of the Tibetan traditions, tranquil abiding. The Dalai Lama and his group, they typically call this calm abiding. The word can be translated numerous ways. And I like tranquil abiding, suits my nature better. The perfections of mental stabilization and wisdom in particular. And it says it has 2 parts: how to train the mind in tranquil abiding, and that they call that the essence of concentration. And then how to train the mind in superior seeing, that's the essence of wisdom. And unless you have a strong sense for what you are, or have touched the self, have touched the oneness, or have experienced what the Buddha would describe it in terms of emptiness, to see that you're not the personality, that there's no structure or essence in what you think you are. That's an illusion in the personality expression. But once you see that awareness, then great wisdom or great revealed knowledge or great experience comes in the tranquil abiding. And the explanation of how to attain this, it usually is represented in 2 parts: necessary conditions, and then how to attain. And the necessary conditions is, we've talked about some of it already: a suitable place for retreats or for meditation, a place that doesn't have distractions or loud noise, little desire. If you want things too strongly, you build images in the mind that you have to contend with those also. So calming of the desire, contentment, being happy with yourself, and being confident that you can express and you can know yourself. And then no distracting activities, no loud sounds, no disturbance, people not screaming at you or judging you or different things. And then pure moral discipline, and that's a very critical component to it. If you don't have moral discipline, and this is generally, and the best way to see that is are you blaming people? Then you probably are thinking that you're doing something right and they're doing something wrong, and that takes you down a path. Or are you trying to be of service and to help all beings, whatever their experience in consciousness? And then no distracting conceptions. If you've been exposed to a teaching that's not a clear teaching, or that may be based on someone's personality or things, you may have ideas in your mind that are the way you think it should be, or that what you were taught as a child, or various things, but distracting conceptions, ideas, wrong ideas in the mind. They can really hold you back. And so it's helpful to be able to be in a situation where you can clear the mind and get rid of a lot of the I guess, powerful ideas that drive us before you start doing it. And then how to attain the tranquil abiding. And they always caution that there's some blockages or obstacles, and laziness is probably the number one. Forgetfulness, you're lazy, you don't practice, you're forgetful, you don't remember what you are, maybe even where you are, or what you're doing. And then mental sinking and mental excitement. And these are conditions. The mental sinking is that you start concentrating on it, but you just kind of get stuck and you can't move past a certain point, and you may sink in or move into a stage where you're very content, but you're not making progress, you're not growing, and you're not eliminating negativity in the body. And that can often be related to mental excitement. You get too excited, you have too high an expectation. Like I have one friend that I've known for years, and he has a very high expectation for what enlightenment is, and he compares everything to it. And there are some mistaken ideas in his mind, but he likes them very much and holds closely to them. And and so he has a great deal of mental excitement and thinking this is the way things are, rather than sitting and experiencing what reality is, or how it's unfolding in his own mind. He keeps going over the idea of what he thinks it is. And then non-application, simply learning all the information. You can have all the drawings in the world and all the teachings and all the lectures that have ever been done by all the great beings that have existed since the beginning of time. But if you don't use that information, it's of no avail to you. And then unnecessary application. Sometimes we have our favorite technique and we want to just do that one only, and we keep doing it and keep doing it. And it can take us to a certain level, but we get stuck in it. We don't move beyond that because we like our favorite thing. So I think Audley expressed this best as always learning to be flexible and adaptable. And he'd have us practice changing even the way we go to work every day, the order in that you put your clothes on, the order, rearrange everything in the bathroom or in the dressing area, so that you have to do things in a different sequence. I remember I mixed up all of my toothpaste and my shaving cream and all those things, and changed all that up at one point. And one morning I got up and went in, and my habits took over, and I ended up putting shave cream on the toothbrush because I put it in the same place. So I wasn't very flexible in that application. So you have opportunities to learn. And then there's opponents to the fine obstacles, or the fine things that, you can have faith, aspiration, effort, suppleness, and mindfulness. And all of these tend to be tied to forgetfulness. It's just like you can hold faith to something, but forget what you are. But the holding the faith is often thinking that you know what it is. And then other things is alertness, the application or non-application, the same sort of things, but very fine divisions of some of these components. And it's useful to explore these, because as you develop concentration, you can go into each one of the levels, and you can begin to see what arises within your particular consciousness. And then there are techniques or tools to help you resolve those and change those. And then concentration is like a seed, and overcoming obstacles and accumulating necessary conditions are like the water and so forth to nourish the seed. And then tranquil abiding is like the fruit that is produced when the seed and all the nourishing conditions are gathered together. And so there are some things that you need to do in preparing for tranquil abiding, or preparing for inner stillness, preparing to be one consciously with yourself. And some of those steps that are necessary, it's just like the water and the right soil for a plant, the right amount of sun. Like Connie was asking about people in their gardening with the temperature, and some of the things I do in my work here is make sure and keep an eye on the plants. Make sure they have plenty of water and they dry out. But I've noticed that the soil is not particularly good in some of the areas here. Way too much sand because it's close to the ocean. So you put water on it and it just disappears, and you come back in an hour and it looks like it's never been watered. So having the right conditions and the right setup are key to developing concentration and developing your overall awareness. And then the kind of wrapping it up, how to attain the 9 mental abidings. And this explanation again is in 2 parts. We define what's the object of meditation, pervasive objects for abandoning individual illusion, objects for abandoning delusion in general, and then there's special objects for scholars and people who study all the time and are lost in their ideas. There are different objects for them to concentrate on, rather than different than what other people are often given. Like a lot of times as you learn meditation, as an object of meditation, you are given an image, perhaps an image of the guru, an image of the teacher, an image of the something in the tradition, one of the symbols to concentrate on. Maybe it's just the Sanskrit symbol for Om, and it's quite a beautiful symbol that attracts the mind in such a way that it helps you to experience that. It's a very powerful image. But there are selection first of an object, and that has to do somewhat with your nature and what works best for you. And a skilled teacher can help you select that if you can't find it on your own, but can help you find an object that's most beneficial for you. And it moves better. And then the 9 mental abidings. And these are things that they talk about it being very scientific, and you can test it. But once you get the object of concentration that you can work on, then there's 9 steps or 9 subtle differences at least that you can go through. And the level 1 is like you have an image or a sound or a mantra or a symbol, something that you're focusing on, and you can once you first start practicing, it's not uncommon that people are simply unable to concentrate even for a few seconds, but in general they call level 1 is less than 60 seconds. And then that's placing it in the mind, placing the object in the mind and holding it there. And then with continual placement, the level 2 says that you can hold your concentration for up to 5 minutes on that. And you could hook up someone to neurofeedback device, measure brain waves, and you could tell whether or not they're paying attention and whether or not they're concentrating. You can't see from that what the object is, but you can see that it's steady and that it's concentrated for an extended period of time. And then the third level is defined as replacement. There's whole chapters about these, but that's concentration up to an hour, where you can simply go into concentration and you don't move. It looks like you're not breathing. It looks like you're not doing anything, and for an hour or more. I've seen a number of people. I used to watch Audley do that all the time. You know, he'd say, "Come over, let's go into my room and meditate." And you know, and I was good for like, you know, the less than 60 seconds kind of stuff, but I could sit there and watch him. And you know, he would simply go inside, turn within, going deeper and deeper, and he would be gone an hour, 2 hours, one time even 3 hours. You know, and it's like he didn't move, nothing. It looked like he wasn't even breathing. But when he came back, he was anchored in the source, anchored in the self, and he could do quite amazing things. And then close placement level 4, at that stage, you simply don't forget the object of meditation. So one of the ways you could test this in people is you could come in and bang loud sounds around them. Even if you can distract them and disturb them and pull them out of the meditation, they'll still can immediately go back into it because they know that object. And then controlling and pacifying, these are very subtle levels of becoming more aware of differences and changes that occur as you meditate. And like the completely pacifying the level 7, there's no mental excitement or no mental sinking, so that you know you can sit there in clarity, and you don't have a tendency to be distracted or to go into a darker level. There's no change. You can hold it in concentration. And then single pointedness, level 8, you can focus as long as you like. And there's been some yogis, there's a little book done by, I think it was the Menninger Foundation. Dr. Elmer Green tested a gentleman named Swami Rama actually in Topeka, Kansas. And he was able to go into these things for like 8 hours, sit in a closed plexiglass box that had no oxygen. They said normally normal person would 15 minutes or so would be out of oxygen, but he could simply slow everything down and take the pulse so low that it appeared the heart had stopped completely, but he was able to sit there for 8 hours. And these are some of the skills that can be developed. And then placement with equipoise, you become the object. It's level 9. And so all of the different stages or transitions in developing concentration, you know, the end result is you become one with the self, one with the God self, one with the guru, one with the great supreme, however you define it. It's becoming one with that object. And unless you go through the stages and develop successively and learn to move and experience the transitions between these stages, it's hard to get to the upper level. And in the Buddhist practices in particular, for each one of these, there's considered anecdotes, or like if you you know, focus and you constantly lose focus, you can do certain practices or do certain techniques that are an antidote for that particular problem. And so it makes it easy for you to change that component, that expression. And I think that's the main things I wanted to cover. So at this point, we can either you know, take a break, take questions, proceed in however you want. And then the only other thing, and I've shared some of these techniques before, or some of the images, and I'll you know, kind of move forward to those. And but these when you have multiple images, like one of the things that Audley taught, maybe I'll just leave it here, and we'll you know, take questions and do a break. But he would teach to use 2 images and then cross the eyes between them. And you know, I don't know if I just had a particular brain that was twisted in that way, but when I first met him, you know, he had all sorts of things that he had us take 2 images with, and you know, they can be very useful tools, and you can assess really quickly, you know, can you cross your eyes for 60 seconds and hold a 3rd image in between them as you cross your eyes and look at the into your nose, a third image forms, and you can sit there for extended periods of time. And you can do it with images like that. With candles, I like the candle image. I like real candles. I find they're very useful, and then yantras, various techniques and forms. Our own symbol that he designed for what we do. Some of his drawings, I use those. And then his image, either as a single image or as dual images. And, and if you want those, you can do it and talk about, like in this particular image, taking the images and making them small. There's a lot of techniques for stuff like that. Anyway, I'll open it up now for questions, or if you want to take a break, take a break.
Okay, Ben, I have a question.
Okay.
One of the things that, well, when I sit down to meditate, I try to keep thoughts from coming into my head, which has been, I'm pretty successful at it.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I notice is that pretty much every time I conk out. And so I don't know what to do to not.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of things that can be done. Like I know, my own meditation. If I'm tired, if I haven't rested well, or if I've eaten too much or too soon, I always go to sleep. And it's like I can start off, do really well for like 3 minutes or 5 minutes, and then I'm I'm out there snoring. I'm out in the sleep land, and my head will drop over. And that's why, the instruction for the meditation is sit comfortably, but not too comfortable. And I know one thing we tended to do, and I think, it was partly because several of us had bad backs, including Audley, and we had a lot of pain in the back. So we tended to get more comfortable, and we made meditation chairs that were, rather than being rocks, they were just these cush, things that were out of this world. And then we tried to enhance them by putting magnets in them, and we had all kinds of special things and stuff like that. All those are things that can be helpful, but getting too comfortable is a problem. A lot of traditions will require that you sit in the full lotus, because and I simply can't do that anymore. I used to be able to, but even if you sit in a chair, you don't, lean back and get real comfortable. Like I know Audley had this dish chair that I ended up getting a couple of them also, and a lot of people like them. They're great, but they get you too relaxed. Many traditions will tell you to sit upright in the chair, to make sure there's a couple of inches between you and the back of the chair, even if you're sitting in a chair. And you find that when you do this, you tend to be, you have to maintain your balance and do that. So it's a little easier to stay conscious. Another thing that I've found is using a mala and doing a mantra. When I just let my mind wander, I start doing the mantra and then I go to sleep quickly. When I'm using the mala to keep moving the bead past the finger and the thumb, it requires just a slight stimulation in the physical body. And so that helps me to stay conscious and for an extended period of time. And that's one reason I think that a lot of people, even advanced meditators, they use it because it helps you stay clear. The Zen monks in particular, are often known that they'll drink a strong tea before they meditate, or strong coffee, and you don't want, again, too much, because it can make you anxious and anxiety, but it helps to clear the mind. And then the biggest thing is simply not having distractions around, but not eating too much. I find that's one of my hardest things is I like to eat. And so I've been working the last few months trying not to eat past a certain, like 5 o'clock in the evening, 6 o'clock in the evening. If I haven't had my dinner by then, I simply don't have any. And I sleep better. I have better meditations. A lot of things happen in that way. But those are things that can help. Beyond that, you know, it's just like it's almost, you have to look at the case one-on-one and kind of meditate together. And sometimes that's one of the advantages I find in meditating with a group or with someone, is that I have to hold my consciousness in a whole different place if we're meditating together, and especially we're meditating remotely together. I found that to be somewhat of a challenge, but it still has a very powerful effect with people. But you can look at the energy flows in the person, look and see if there's blockages in the body or in the mind, and you know, you can often find techniques that are specific to very specific things. Like in Buddhism, if you have too much anger, you know, there's an antidote for that, or there's a technique. And it may be a technique that has visualizations as well as mantras that are associated with it. But it's very specific things to that type of problem, that they call it poisons in the body, because they're distraction. And so we have to work those. And then the things they talk about, forgetfulness, laziness, sloth, all those are things that we all tend to get into if we're not real focused. And you know, I could do a better job with my diet, with my exercise, with my rest, you know, all those things. But I do find if I get 8 hours of sleep, my meditations are much better than if I only get 5 hours of sleep, because I go to sleep when I sit to meditate. Does that help at all?
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess we'll just go with questions. If anybody needs to take a break, just mute yourself and take a break. No, that's it. Any other questions?
So Ben, you mentioned that when you get 8 hours of sleep, you do better meditation. How many hours of meditation do you do a day?
As many as I can. You know, for me, a really good day, you know, could have, you know, 6 hours of meditation. You know, it's just like I get up in the morning and usually meditate for a couple hours before I do anything, you know, and then I try through the day to meditate at various points. And then in the evening, I like to do more meditation. And then if I've been trying the last couple of years as I go to sleep to transition more consciously into sleep. And so I can be aware of all the subtle realms, you know, in the dream world, the etheric realms, the akashic realms, all those, to go into as consciously as possible. And you know, I try all kinds of things. Like there are techniques to do that can help you, in a sense, control the consciousness throughout the night. But also I'll do mantra and go into it with go to sleep doing a mantra. I may keep the mantra playing on headphones or around me, so that if I wake up, I hear that, and then I get up to meditate and I go, you know, directly into that. So it takes effort, you know, and I enjoy it. So I try to do as much as I can. Like some days I like to, you know, if I listen to the mantra all night and I'll listen to it as much as I can in the day, I think I can get 12 hours or so when I'm not interacting with people and stuff. And it affects, you know, it has an effect on your consciousness. You can notice changes. It's like moving quickly. And you notice changes quickly, you know, easily.
Okay. I was thinking my meditation was substitution for sleep. So I think maybe that could be beneficial to get to sleep and then do better meditation.
Yeah, it is being rested. And like one of the things I have is I have an Apple Watch, but I know several people that are on this have the Fitbit and stuff, but they monitor your sleep condition, or the most current versions. And like with the Apple Watch, it actually checks your blood oxygen level every 5 minutes while you're sleeping, your pulse and all that. But it can get an assessment for how much you get of deep sleep and how much you get of kind of in between sleep. It even monitors the sound around me. And if I get like a loud sound goes off. It may not wake me up consciously, but it'll bring me to a more conscious level of sleep. You know, I'm not in the deep state, but it's very useful to track those. And I've been doing some things recently with, I noticed that when I was sitting up in the morning, when I get up at 6 and go into meditation, and keep the watch on. So I'm tracking, but I noticed that I was going into a state of deeper sleep, even though I was staying conscious through the whole thing. But my body, the physiology in my body says that my pulse has slowed, my oxygen content had dropped very low. Pulse will sometimes reach, when I'm in deep meditation, will reach the deepest levels or the slowest pulse that I have all night. Things like that. And there was a time when I simply couldn't lay down and sleep. And Audley went through a period of time like that also. And he simply would set up all night. And so I experiment with things like that and find that, do I get rest when I set up? And can I effectively meditate all night rather than sleep in a prone, a laying position? And I find that, it looks like physiologically I may be better off sitting up right now than laying down, and the body, I mean, the signals I get from my body, the oxygen levels, I'm simply breathing better, and my pulse may be lower, but it says I get to a very relaxed state. And so, I encourage you to just test yourself. Use every tool you can get your hands on. And
good.
Do better.
Thank you.
Ben, are those watches waterproof?
Yeah, the latest version of them are.
Okay.
And you can see all sorts of things. It's just hooking them up and like and as I said, I had a number of friends that do the full headgear for brainwave monitoring. They put the cap on and do 32 channels or 64 channels of that. There's actually an experiment going on at the Institute of Noetic Science up in Petaluma. They're looking for meditators right now. They want to test a different technique, and so they hope you've had some background in mindfulness meditation. They'll connect you and take all the data on that, and then they'll teach you an experimental technique and have you see if they can check the same results. But there's a lot of things out there and a lot of tools now that can help us improve our concentration, improve our ability. So have fun with it.
Ben.
Yes.
So you were talking about the good day is 6 hours of meditation, and towards the other end of the spectrum, there for a while when we were all real busy, we were told that, well, if you don't have time to meditate for a long period, we were setting timers on our watch, and maybe once an hour we would meditate for two or 3 minutes, or we could set it for every 15 minutes and do a kind of a mini meditation, but do it multiple times during the day. And do you see any benefit to that? I mean, I guess it's always good to take a minute and think about God, or to think about, your meditation, to slow down and take some meaningful breaths. Right. Do you see benefit in that extreme?
It's beneficial, and if you have developed the concentration or the ability to move, to literally just turn the switch and go deep, if you've developed that ability, it can be very useful, and it can help you stay in that. And some of the techniques that are done with monks in a monastery environment, they can use triggers like that to stay in that as much as possible. And that can be very useful. But I find for most people, if they haven't learned to meditate well and deeply, that it can help them calm down, but it doesn't take you to deep meditation. Right. And that's one of the things where if you're doing some practice like that, checking just with like your watch or your Fitbit and seeing where your pulse is, seeing where the mind state is, like when it gets to a certain oxygen level and a certain pulse level and all that, it says, okay, you must be in deep sleep, and plus with the watch on, it says you're not moving physically. It's got, you know, accelerometers in it. It tracks every movement that you do. So it can tell whether or not the body is actually moving. If you're in deep meditation or deep sleep, the body should be in a state of paralysis and not moving at all. So, you know, those are just ways to monitor where you are and what you're doing and things like that. But the tools help. I like tools, and they give you feedback, and so you can adjust performance more easily.
Well, you know, Audley said he was a gadget guru.
Yeah,
He liked all those things too. So
I think that's where I got it. You know, just
yeah.
like he'd get these things and he'd say, "Can you make one like this? Can you fix it? I broke it. You know, can you all this stuff and stuff." But you know, and like the book I talked about, the Yogi in the Lab that Elmer Green wrote there at the Manager Institute. You know, when he found out those guys were coming to Oklahoma City, that was Dr. Edgar Mitchell and Dr. Elmer Green. You know, he took a bunch of us. You know, and this was like 71, 72 probably, and we went to this seminar somewhere, and you know, these guys did all these tests and stuff, but they showed what was being done with the latest gadgets at the time.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So if you can only do 2 minutes, do 2 minutes. If you can do 20 minutes, it's better. And it looks like, you know, from the stuff with the neurofeedback and my own experience is that if you get to 20 or 30 minutes, you start getting into a pretty peaceful state. You know, in the physiology, you can monitor that. If you can go more quickly than that, which a few people can that I've seen, but it takes me, especially if I've been upset, you know, just like I may need to do Kriyas for an hour, you know, to be able to calm down enough to say, okay, now I think I could listen to the sound and meditate.
Yeah, and the other thing is that if you can't meditate without going to sleep, it means that you're probably not getting enough sleep, so the sleep is good too.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're having too much trouble with it, you know, like when I was falling asleep all the time, you know, I finally began to affect my work also. And I went to the doctor and said, you know, I'm having trouble staying asleep in my office. You know, and they said, they sent me to a sleep lab, checked me and said, you've got sleep apnea. If you use this machine, you know, when you're laying down, it can help you breathe, the CPAP machine. And so I thought, well, when I first tried it, it didn't work very well. And then I wanted to use the machine. And it can be very effective, but it just means you get much better rest while you're sleeping. And so when you get up to meditate, you do much better. But if I hold my head erect and I don't let my neck drop over, you know, my head fall forward, because when I do that, it cuts off the flow of air, and then I immediately go to sleep. You know, and it just you know, straight physiology. So proper posture is critical for good meditation.
Thank you.
I have 2 cents worth.
Yes.
When I started feeling the effects of age a little bit in the body is when I started deciding that I didn't really want to spend huge amounts of time sitting to meditate. And so I started exploring other options, which included the boggle, which is very nice.
Right.
What I really find is if you're a busy person and you do have a fair amount of stress, that something like that, which I think has been studied for stress in other ways, is very useful as a preliminary, so that when you do sit down and meditate, it's more effective.
Correct.
Because you can clear all that stuff that's kind of keeping you from settling in more easily with a technique like that involves the whole body. And then your meditation doesn't have to be huge. You can just sit down and go inside much easier. But
Right.
not always, but I mean, and you can overdo that too. I find sometimes I overdo the Bhagavad, and I'm too tired to really get a good meditation otherwise. So it's a balance for sure.
That is. No, I've noticed that even with my walking, you know, if I walk too much in a day, it fatigues the body, and then I go to sleep more. If I kind of get that sweet spot in there, which is for me about 9,000 steps, you know, and if I get that, boy, I'm good. If I do 12,000, like sometimes I do challenges and 12,000, 16,000, you know, and more, then I'm too fatigued. You know, the body needs time to recover, and so it doesn't work as well. But and then the meditations, like movement meditations, there's some traditions like Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist monk. It's really a Theravadan tradition. Very popular with them is a walking meditation. And I've done that. When people are really good at it, a group of them get together and they start chanting and they start walking in a large circle, because, you know, there's a bunch of people, but it kind of sucks you up into it. And before long, you're into this phenomenal conscious awareness state of knowing. It's like every movement that you make is a conscious movement. And when you do that, then all of a sudden consciousness, like when you sit then to meditate, you move into it consciously and you know what you're doing and you're in control of the energy and you can manifest. So the physical components can be very useful to train the body. And it's like in the Buddha with some people, if he, you know, he'd come and they'd tell him whatever's going on. He'd say, oh, you just need to go walk in a circle, you know, or do this position, do this mudra. You know, there'd be, you know, things that will alter your flow of energy, but they all require some form of concentration to be able to do it. And so the more you develop the concentration muscle, and it can be developed, the better and the easier it gets.
On the other side of it, in terms of the best mental approach to meditation, I found, I think, is the bodhicitta. I mean, I probably had the most phenomenal meditations when I can really get into that state.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I agree. Me too. You know, really, really beautiful state. Any other questions? Does this information help about concentration? Or the...
Yeah.
And
Yes.
Maybe one thing I'm curious, if people practice the you know, the third eye, this crossing the eyes and stuff like that, do people practice that? Or what techniques? Let me see, somebody's writing some questions too. Okay. Okay. Well, if there's no additional questions, I guess I've covered what I had hoped to cover today. I encourage you to meditate more. You know, love God with all your heart as much as you can, and try to find that peaceful place within yourself. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Okay, we'll be in touch.
See you next time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.